Unmasking virus writers and hackers. When we think of the people who make our lives miserable by hacking into computers or spreading malicious viruses, most of us imagine an unpopular teenage boy, brilliant but geeky, venting his frustrations from the safety of a suburban bedroom. Actually, these stereotypes are just that, stereotypes, according to Sarah Gordon, an expert in computer viruses and security technology, and a senior research fellow with Semantic Security Response. Since 1992, Gordon has studied the psychology of virus writers. A hacker, or a virus writer, is just as likely to be the guy next door to you, she says, or the kid at the checkout line bagging your groceries. Your average hacker is not necessarily some goth type, dressed entirely in black and sporting a nose ring. She may very well be a 50-year-old female. The virus writers Gordon has come to know have varied backgrounds. While predominantly male, some are female. Some are solidly academic, while others are athletic. Many have friendships with members of the opposite sex, good relationships with their parents and families. Most are popular with their peers. They don't spend all their time in the basement. One virus writer volunteers in his local library, working with elderly people. One of them is a poet and a musician. Another is an electrical engineer, and others work for a university quantum physics department. You wouldn't pick them out of a lineup as being the perpetrator. Hackers and virus writers are actually very different, distinct populations. Hackers tend to have a more thorough knowledge of systems and a more highly developed skill set, Gordon says, whereas virus writers generally take a shallower approach to what they're doing. Hackers tend to have a much deeper knowledge of individual applications and are still regarded as being somewhat sexy in today's counterculture, while virus writing is looked down upon, mostly for its random damage and lack of required skill. Their motivations may also differ. While both hackers and virus writers are initially attracted by the technical challenge, hacking is more about power and control. When you're hacking and you get into a system, you remain involved with that system. You take it over and dominate it. On the other hand, once a virus writer releases a program into the wild, the virus goes off and keeps on making copies of itself independently of the author. It's not as intimate or connected a relationship as between a hacker and the computer. The virus writer relinquishes control and becomes disassociated from the actual activity he or she has set in motion. Gordon explains that people write viruses for a number of reasons. Some may perceive it as a technical challenge, even though writing a virus is actually very easy. It can take 2 minutes or less, depending on the application you're using. And the part of the program that makes it viral, i.e. that makes it replicate itself, is generally very simple, just 1 or 2 lines of code. It's much more complicated to write a useful application than it is to write a virus. Younger virus writers like to be part of a group. They look for peer identity, which is important to them. Or it may be a way to make a social statement. If you're a young person who doesn't have a lot of power and you can assert yourself with a political statement in a virus that travels all around the world, you might think you're making a difference, imagining yourself a modern-day social activist. Gordon says it's a big deal to them when they see it on CNN. They feel like they've reached the world. Furthermore, Gordon says, most virus writers don't understand the damage they do. Most of them just don't make the connection between actions and their consequences. This is understandable to a degree, because the computer has introduced a shift in the way we communicate. Desensitization occurs. You miss all the visual cues, the contextual clues, and you don't see the impact you're having on another person. We've all gotten email from people who are actually abusive in writing when they'd never speak to us that way in person. People who make mischief with their computers seem to distance themselves from their actions. They justify their behavior with the rationale that it's not really wrong, it's not illegal, or they may tell themselves, well, everybody has antivirus software, so if I send this out, it won't really hurt anybody. Fortunately, social pressure is changing the impressions people have of hackers and virus writers. Their own peers are beginning to say to them, this is not cool. And while it is still widely legal to make viruses publicly available, Gordon's research has shown a decrease in acceptance of online publication of virus source code. Gordon says the media used to promote virus writers as being geniuses and heroes, but now the press has changed its tune. They no longer portray virus writers as brilliant and misunderstood. We're seeing the media start to turn around, she says. We're getting the message out to young people that writing viruses really isn't cool.
Female virus writer packs punch. She can kick you in the pants and wipe your hard drive cleaner than a dog's dinner plate. So when the young kickboxer and virus writer known as Gigabyte tells you she doesn't want her face on TV, well, you play along. I'll just shoot you from behind, I say, carrying my TV camera across the large mat that covers the health club's gymnasium floor. It's almost time for the 6 p.m. kickboxing class, and Gigabyte is the only woman there. Of course, she's used to that. In the male-dominated world of virus writers, she stands out. And not only because of her gender. She is also something of a virus-writing prodigy, having started programming at age 6. I figured out how to write a few lines of code on my uncle's Commodore 64, says Gigabyte. Later, I wanted to learn more about programming, so I went to the store and asked for books. The salespeople were surprised. It was like, why do you want a book? Why don't you just buy a game and go play? But games are not very interesting to me. I wanted to learn how to write real, executable programs. So she did. At age 14, she wrote her first computer worm, which took over the shutdown screens of infected users. 2 years later, she wrote a powerful virus that mangles MP3 files. More recently, she became only the second person to write a virus in C#, the language of Microsoft's .NET platform. Her so-called Sharpay worm, which comes in an email attachment, spreads via Microsoft's Outlook email program, and infects certain files and computers where the .NET framework is present. The morning after kickboxing class, I arrive at 6:30. She's having tea with her grandmother in the kitchen of a tiny, immaculate cottage. She has lived with her grandparents most of her life, for reasons she declines to discuss. We catch the public bus downtown to her school. Although the bus is packed with other teenagers, she speaks to no one. We walk a few blocks to her school, where I meet her computer teacher. She is a good young programmer, she says, but I do not approve of her virus writing. I know she says she is not causing any harm, and it is true that she does not intentionally spread these viruses, but I do not think it is appropriate, and viruses can cause a lot of damage. Nevertheless, teacher and student are cordial to each other throughout the long morning class. Later that afternoon, Gigabyte walks around the computer room her grandparents have set aside for her, flicking on no fewer than 4 Windows machines. She's comfortable here, and full of opinions. On being some sort of feminist icon, she says, "I'm a virus writer. If I wanted to make a feminist statement, don't you think it would be part of the viruses I've written? I mean, yeah, I do want to admit I'm female because there is nothing to hide about it. The world should know there are female virus writers out there. But it's certainly not my motivation for virus writing. I do this for myself, not for the whole world. Other females don't need me to stand up for them. They can do it for themselves." On the ethics of writing viruses, I'm not responsible for stupid people who open email attachments that erase their files. "Hey," she says, "let's go outside. I want to show you something." I'm led out into the backyard garden, which is beautifully groomed. There are painted gnomes and a small pond. And then, suddenly, there is a ferret. Gigabyte's pet ferret, out for a little afternoon walk. How right they are for each other, I think, looking at the ferret and the virus writer. Both are cunning and quick, and you wouldn't want either of them to bite you. Virus writing is so aggressive, and most reasonable people consider it an act of vandalism, or at least potential vandalism, I say. Would you spray paint graffiti on somebody's wall? "We are not coming inside anyone's walls," she said. "The users are running the virus. They are the ones clicking on it." "So you think the people who execute these programs are responsible for the damage that your viruses do?" I ask. "Actually," she says, "I think stupid people should have to have some sort of license to get on the internet." There's a pause in the conversation. The ferret is turning somersaults in the grass at our feet. "Do you think of what you do as art?" I ask. "I want to do something original, that not everyone does," she says. "If you write something that's new or funny or special in a way, then I think it is a form of art. Yes." I ask her if she wants to work with computers for a living. When she grows up, I mean. "Yes, but not with an antivirus company," she says. "I will never do antivirus. That would run counter to her code."